This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, it's Marty from the Accelerator team, and I'm here with Hugh Welch from Muckle. Hi Hugh, how are you doing?
I'm very well indeed, man.
What are Muckle? What do you do?
What are Muckle? We are an independent firm of corporate lawyers. By that I mean, as lawyers, we look after all the needs of a wide variety, all the legal needs of a wide variety of businesses in the North East and further afield in the UK. Okay,
so our listeners are in business.
Yeah.
They're probably thinking, why would I need a lawyer in business? We just threw some ideas around there. We think there's a lot of areas that people, let's just say though, we're starting in business. We're sitting today and we're just about to get going. What do we think of first? Where do we start?
Right. Well, you've got to work out whether you're starting by yourself or you're starting in conjunction with one or more other people.
Yeah.
And then when you've got through that bit, you've got to work out what the best legal structure is for you, whether you want to be a partnership or whether you want, and this is where most businesses would go, down the limited company route.
Yeah.
The key to that is in the name, limited. You have limited liability for the debts of the company.
Yeah.
And that's why most people.
That's why you might consider it. Yeah. So we often talk to people about the tax implications as well. There are different taxation, but also the protection you have from the people who chase you for money, for instance, banks, HMRC, etc., is fundamentally different. Now, without going into the detail on why you might do them, if you're going into business with someone else, you'll normally, if you're in partnership, you'll need a partnership agreement.
Yeah.
If you're going into a company, you'll want a shareholders agreement. What kind of things do we need to bottom out here?
Yeah. So let's assume for the purpose of this that you and I are going into business together. A slightly unlikely concept, the base you're an accountant, I'm a lawyer, but hey,
we're arch nemesis.
We are, and we've decided that we're going to go down the limited company route.
Yeah.
We need to work out decision making. So how are we going to make decisions? Are the things that we can just get on and do by ourselves, or are the decisions perhaps of a given value, where we're going to, above a particular financial amount, that need to be joint decisions?
Yeah.
We need to work all that through. Then again, assuming we're going down the limited company route, I'm afraid to say we need to deal with tricky things like what happens if we die? Can I leave my shares to my wife? Yeah. Do you want to be in a jointly owned company with my wife? I wouldn't want to offer a view on that one in case she's listening, but there is that sort of difficult issue.
Of course she's listening, Hugh. Of course she's listening.
Or am I required on my death to transfer my shares to you, and you have to buy them so that a lump of money goes into my estate, so my wife gets that rather than the shares. So before we've even started trading, before we've gone out and looked for our first piece of work, we absolutely have to get the structure of our ownership right. And I've always felt strongly that if people who are going in business together tackle the difficult issues at the start and have the hard conversations, then they are much more likely to work successfully together and much less likely to fall out than if they just crack on.
It's really important that point as well, because if you wait until the business has a lot of value,
it gets much harder.
Or on the opposite end of the scale is being chased vigorously, those conversations are far harder when you're under those conditions. If we're saying, well, what happens if we die? Oh, well, obviously it's, you and I started this, I would like you to keep control. That's easy when it's not worth 10 million quid.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden you go like, well, no, hold on, I want. So it's important to have those initial discussions at the start, isn't it? But you're right also, even on the more mundane things, if we're in business, who can write a check? Or who can make a bank payment? At what point do we need to check with each other? They're often massively overlooked. And I think people do that in a casual way and then never really iron that out and can quite often come unstuck down the line. So I think they're really important points. Most people, however, probably get really excited and just jump into, well, we've got a customer, the first call is to the printer to get business cards or the web developer, and they often overlook the law and the accounts, to be fair, Hugh. Don't worry. We're neglected equally, I would suspect, by excited entrepreneurs starting business. Let's just say we are at the customer stage now. We've looked at the company, we've got the partnership, that's all sorted. We're getting customers. What do we need to think about here then?
Can we go back a stage before we get to the customers?
Let's please do. Yeah.
We need to have sorted out our contracts of employment.
Of course, yes.
Even though we're the owners of this business, there is still a legal obligation that we have contracts. We have contracts of employment.
Yeah.
Quite often
I was coming on to employments later.
Yeah, but you jumped ahead. You see, we should have sorted ours out, and we should have sorted out what our salaries are. What our commitments are. I mean, you look like a hard worker, but you might only want to work 3 days a week, and that needs to be clear. So we have to have
actually, if you're going into business with someone, you don't talk about how much holiday people are going to get. No. So I just presumed we were doing this to have loads more holiday. Yeah. I presumed this was to build something huge and put loads of time in. Yeah, you're going to get those extra.
So we have to sort our contracts out, but we are also legally obliged to have contracts of employment in place for all the people we take on. Yeah. And that is often neglected. And that's not just the stuff about what are you going to pay. You need, particularly if we're taking on salespeople, you need to think about what we call restrictive covenants, preventing people leaving us, pinching our ideas,
taking your client book and those types of things,
and setting up in competition.
Because again, I speak to so many businesses, and I say, well, you must have contracts of employment. No, it's like, but you legally have to. But also, why would you not? Why would you not want these things? They're there just as much to protect you as they are to protect the employee.
Yep. So basic stuff. Notice period. You don't want to find that your key people can walk out just on giving you a week's notice. Yeah. So all that sort of. So we needed in this new joint business that we have. We needed to have wrapped up all that stuff before we get to the customer stage. Assume we've done all our employment stuff. Yeah, right. What back to your customer point.
Well, let's touch on employment again then. So people might go, well, I won't have employees. That all sounds like a pain in the backside. Let's not have employees. But you're still then going to probably buy in services via consultants or some other kind of way. Yeah. But again, you need to agree all those terms with those people just the same, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. It's no different if you're using. The concept's the same if you're using a self-employed consultant. Someone's
coming in doing 3 days a week. You still don't want them to steal your client base. Yeah. You still want them to let you know if you're not coming in. How are you going to bill? Who checks the timesheet or whatever you want to call it to make sure you've got all those basic things need to be sorted, don't they?
Yeah.
Because again, if you can get those things out of the way at the start, you're less likely to fall out about them down the line, aren't you?
Yeah. Definitely.
So so we're getting people in there. We've got some customers now, Hugh. We still haven't got anywhere to trade from. We're going to come on to that.
Okay.
But we've got a customer knocking on the door. They want us to deliver a thing by a time with a price. What do we do now?
We need a set of commonly called T's and C's, terms and conditions of sale that set out the basis upon which we are dealing with our customers. Now, it's fair to say that we haven't quite yet decided what this joint business that you and I have set up. We haven't quite decided.
I would imagine it's going to be some kind of image rights or TV rights, surely based on this podcast, isn't it? We're going to be putting a show on Channel 4, I would imagine, via our own production company.
Okay, well, let's assume we're doing on the basis that, let's see, we're doing something more basic around the manufacturing side of things. Okay, so
we'll need to sell merchandise, of course.
Yeah. So dealing with our terms and conditions, simple stuff in there that things like what are called reservation of title clauses. So if we supply our product to our new customer and they have to pay us in 30 days' time, say, that they don't get ownership of that product until they've paid us. So that's the sort of...
That lets you get your stuff back,
like,
quite simply, yeah.
Broad principles, yes.
Yeah.
If our customer goes bust, that lets you get your stuff back.
Yeah. Which is handy.
Which is very handy. And, you know, you've just got to look at the body shop went into administration just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Think of all the suppliers to that. Think of all that stock in all those hundreds of shops.
Locked in those shops, all of the soaps.
Now,
and everything.
if those suppliers have got good T's and C's and good reservation of title clauses in there, which is a general principle, they should get their stuff back.
Yeah.
If they haven't, they won't get their stuff back, and they won't get paid.
And they're probably not going to get paid for it
Yeah.
either. Yeah. Okay then. What about putting provisions in those things for things like payment terms? You know, it's mine until you've paid. That's good.
Yeah. Payment terms. You can have provisions
Deposits
in there
on account, or all those things should all be in there.
entitle you to charge interest for late payments. You can have all of that in there, and it should also. I can't imagine that we would ever supply a defective product. It's going to be such a good business that we set up, but you do need to, depending upon what this mysterious product is that we are making, you do need to have provisions in there about
for returns.
How long we're around the sale of goods, its quality, its fitness for purpose, and all that side of things, and the extent to which we are guaranteeing this product and the length of that guarantee. That's all the stuff that you get picked up in these T's and C's.
Yeah, it's worth saying, mind you, we probably should have. I as a good host should have said this at the start. There are a lot of things legally that are in by statute that you cannot overwrite. You cannot give an employee less than the statutory minimum. Yeah. You cannot say no refunds ever, no matter what. There are things that are in their Sale of Goods Act that you can't supersede. But what we're doing here is we're saying, well, the statutory minimum protections aren't normally enough for good business. You probably want to build more than that in.
We're going to get into some pretty dull nitty gritty here, which is probably not a good idea. But there are, for example, different things that you can deal with if you're dealing with consumers than if you're dealing with businesses. Yeah. So in our great new business, we can restrict our obligations in relation to these products considerably more if we're just dealing with businesses than if we were dealing with.
So the t-shirts we're going to sell, if we're selling them wholesale, we can have different rules than if we're selling direct to consumer.
Correct. So we need obviously to think about who is our customer when we're looking at our T's and C's.
Yeah. Okay then. So this is going great, by the way. We've now, we're thinking about buying machinery. We're thinking about taking on a lease we're going to start printing our own t-shirts now. This is going awesome. And then we're going to get some premises because, we've got all these t-shirts being printed. That brings in a couple of interesting areas. So normally if you're borrowing money, there will be things like personal guarantees from lenders, perhaps. And of course, obviously, all the contractual stuff that comes with that. Now, you wouldn't normally write those. The lender would normally write those. But are there any things you need to be aware of there? Then, Hugh, so this machine is going to cost us, it's a couple of $100,000 worth of kit. What do we need to be aware of here? Then, what do people get wrong here, or what's often missed?
Yeah, well, you mentioned personal guarantees. We decided we were going to trade through a limited company in order to limit our liability. So we need to think very, very, very carefully indeed before we sign up to a personal guarantee, because it is exactly that.
That will go through the company to the individual owner.
Yes, it means that ultimately if the company fails, our name is on the line individually, and without being too technical and difficult about it, we then need to think about how it between us works, because you're obviously a hugely successful and wealthy accountant. I'm a poor lawyer, so the bank's going to go off The bank's going to go after, and we've given this personal guarantee for £50,000. The company fails, the bank wants his 50,000 back. They're going to go after you because you're the man with the money. That's great, but you need to think about that.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those awkward discussions that ideally you have at the start.
Yeah.
And it might be that if you don't want to do that personal guarantee, you wait a bit.
Yeah.
And you save up. It's an old-fashioned concept, but you might have to do a different route or pay more for your borrowing because there's a lot of things to think about.
And if you hear the expression joint and several being bounced around, and I don't want to get too technical about this, but if we give a joint and several personal guarantee to the bank, it means the bank, the joint and several bit means the bank can decide whether it sues you or sues me for the whole lot.
Wherever it can get its stuff from. They're not that fussy, they just want their stuff, don't they? We're flying through these. We've got this huge machine coming and we've got hundreds of thousands of t-shirts that that are flying out the door, but we need to store them somewhere. Property, businesses and property. Now again, it's interesting because you made the differentiation before about business to business and business to consumer. Most people's idea of rental will be from renting a house, where there's a lot of tenant protection, a staggering amount of tenant protection. Businesses renting commercial premises aren't quite so lucky, are they? That it's a whole different rule set. Is it worth covering off some of the...
It's a whole different rule set, and there is no such thing as a standard lease.
There's no standard commercial lease.
There's no standard commercial lease. Every single one is different, and to an extent, it depends upon your market position and what's going on in the market as to how you negotiate that lease. But the main things that you'll be looking at is obviously what's the rent you're going to pay. How long is the lease in years?
Yeah.
Do we have a break clause? So if we agree a 10-year lease, can we get out of it in 5 years' time? Because by then now they know it's a t-shirt business we've got. Our t-shirt business is going to be booming in 5 years' time. We're going to need bigger premises. So do we have a break clause? Can we get out of it? Yeah. So there's rent, there's break, and then the other biggie is repair. What are the repairing obligations? And you'll hear the word FRI bounced around, the acronym, which is full repairing and insuring. What that means is obviously, if you're in a full repairing lease, you are responsible for the whole thing. So the structure of it, the tenant. Roof, the structure of it, the roof,
totally different to residential.
So repair is the other biggie that we need to worry about.
Because if you're renting a shop and something happens and the roof blows off or something, you might think, I'll ring the landlord, they need to fix that. You might have signed up to
a full repairing lease.
Probably
so
your
it's your
obligation,
problem.
isn't it? Yeah.
Ideally, what we want is an internal repairing lease only, which is exactly what you would expect it to be. We have to paint the walls when we get out, but we aren't. The responsibility for the structure, the roof, the foundations sits with the landlord.
Yeah. You mentioned break clauses then. Hugh, can we expand on that? Because we this is going great. People love the Hugh and Marty t-shirts. We've got a team of happy people.
Wearing these stylish t-shirts.
At some point, we're probably going to want to outsource this. We're probably going to get these printed overseas, or because we're going to go international at some point. We might not need the premises, or we might outgrow them, as you've said. But just as likely, you might say, well, I don't want to sign up to this, $2,000 a month for the next 10 years. We've got a great idea and we're confident, but we might want out for other reasons. It might not go well.
Yeah.
What's the kind of the balance here taken between the landlord and the tenant on breaks? Because if you want to be able to get out, they probably also want to be able to put the rent up at some point, don't they? What can people expect? The kind of discussion that would be had there.
Everything in that negotiation, frankly, everything is up for grabs, and it depends upon the strength of your negotiating position. Yeah. So if our would-be landlord has had this unit empty for 2 or 3 years and is desperate for a tenant, then we're going to negotiate a better deal than if they haven't. But you take the break clauses, you could have a position where we could exercise our break as tenants. We could get out at any point on giving 12 months notice.
Yeah.
You could have that if the landlord would agree to it. You mentioned rent review. If there is a norm, it is that the rent is reviewed every 5 years or so in longer leases. And yes, sometimes that is tied in with a break clause where the landlord has the opportunity to get out if the reviewed rent is unacceptably high.
Yeah.
And that, if you can negotiate that at the outset, it's a great provision because it gives you some element of control over the rent review process.
Yeah. What that surprises people quite often as well as the idea of dilapidations. So you mentioned this full repair and insure. Yeah. So in practice, the landlord will normally insure the property and pass the cost on for the insurance.
Correct, yeah.
But unless you're in some kind of shared unit, they'll normally just expect you to get on and maintain the premises.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you don't, when you move out, from experience of speaking to people who've been commercial tenants, they can quite often be surprised that they have to do work on the way out. And they say, but I've left it in a better condition than it was when I got there. And it's not just that it has to be in good condition, it can often be reinstated back to the original condition, can't it?
Yes.
Which surprises people. They say, but I've moved into 4 bare walls, and I've built a shop and I've left it all for you. Well, the landlord might not want that.
Yeah. And dilapidations, it's become a mini industry in the property world, in my view. I'm not a property lawyer. It's become a mini industry in the property world over the last few years, and that's particularly because of the difficulties about reletting. But in brief, yes, as a tenant, if you're on a full repairing lease, you have to put it back into excellent condition at the end. Excellent isn't the technical word, but yes, you do have to put it back into better condition than it was at the outset. Unless, and we are getting complicated here, so you and I are a wonderful printing business, we see this unit, it's pretty scruffy, the landlord's insisting on us taking a full repairing lease. The only way we can protect our position against the dilapidations risk is by having what's called a schedule of condition prepared at the beginning, where we can probably do it ourselves. We go around, we take a load of photos of the cracked drain pipes, the damp walls, the leaking gutters, all that rubbish. We take a photo of it and we agree that we are under our repairing obligation. We aren't obliged to put it in any better condition than we got it, and that protects us.
Yeah, because again, you could go in quite naively and then move out of what was very scruffy, out, you think, right, well, we spent a lot of money getting that into decent condition, but then, you've got excellent, not a legal term, but it says you've got to leave it excellent, and you can still get a dilapidations bill from the landlord and say, well, I like it better. And you can go, well, but hold on, it is better, but it's not good enough. You signed an agreement that says you will leave this ready to let, or whatever the term is, and that can catch people out, can't it?
Yeah, and all landlords they're much more alert to this now.
Well, it's not their first time normally, is it?
Yeah, and they all pursue dilapidations much more vigorously.
Is this the industry that you've just suggested?
Much more vigorously, partly because, there maybe isn't the same tenant demand, so
there's not a queue of tenants happy to come in and spend the money.
We're chatting about factory units, because that's where our wonderful T-shirt printing business is going.
We could open a shop, though, couldn't we?
Well, yeah, or we could be dull lawyers and we could take some office. We could take some office premises, and you'll see lots of empty office premises in Newcastle, but you'll also see lots of refurbishment going on where tenants have gone out and they've had to pay the dilapidations charge, and the landlord is now revamping and refurbing them in the hope of getting new tenants. So dilapidations is as big an issue in the office market as it is in the manufacturing industrial market.
There's probably some other things to cover off here then. We've covered property, we've covered people, we've covered a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
What about protecting your intellectual property and your assets and, kind of royalties and, making sure people don't steal your ideas?
Yeah, there's a whole raft.
We don't want people printing dodgy T-shirts, do we? We want to control our T-shirt empire here. What do we do there?
This all depends upon what business we run. So we might come up with a hugely imaginative and clever name for our T-shirt company.
I'm sure we will.
Fair to say that name's presently escaping me, but assuming we do think of this wonderfully clever name, we may want to protect that name so that somebody doesn't pinch the name.
Yeah.
Then we're going to have these fabulously arty designs. So there'll be some intellectual property rights in that. So, there's a whole raft of what is called IPR, intellectual property rights, that you can and should protect, depending upon what your business is and what you're doing. So that's trademarks, patents, all that sort of thing. And it's key. If you build up an idea and you start making money out of it, protecting it is absolutely central, because that's where the value is in your business.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Hugh, but I'm already thinking of designs and colour themes and what kind of material we're going to make these from, where we're going to make them. So I'm looking forward to hearing some. We'll role play some ideas after this, but just in the last literally the 60 seconds.
Yeah.
What's the thing that you think most businesses miss then before we sign off?
I'm afraid it's concentrating on the paperwork. I know that sounds an awfully dull thing to say.
As a dull lawyer, though, that's expected.
Don't just sign. Don't just sign the lease that the landlord offers you. They all vary. Don't just go into business without sorting out your shares agreement.
Don't download a template contract. For anything, to be fair.
And fill in the blanks and
you're very unlikely to be a template at business, are you? Yeah. Okay then. Well, listen to you. That's been fantastic. I hope that's been of use to the people listening, anyone in business. And again, it's hard when you're excited and you're thinking about your business card print and the cool stuff your website can do and your socials. But I do think it's important that people do consider those, certainly before you sign anything, consider them properly.
Yeah.
Take care. All right, Hugh, thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed that episode of the Business Stuff podcast. As always, reach out to our guest. If you've got any comments, we'd love to hear them.